There are many gifted online astrologers that can tell you what the energies mean that are coming up. And one of the big energies that they talk about is eclipses. And eclipses are always connected to the South Node and the North Node. And so if it's connected to the South Node, it's endings and uh, something you need to release and something that is closing in your destined path. And um, the one that we're looking at currently, that is on August 12th, will be with the South Node. So what is ending is in the sign of Leo. So all the things that Leo has rules, which is your ego and your expressiveness, how you show up, your sense of play, your it rules the house of romance. It's your pride and your playful side, your romantic side, your in how you entertain, your creativity and your authority, how your sense of authority, or how dramatic you are, or how dignified, or how uh, maybe if you're conceited or if you're extroverted or if you're purposeful. Leo rules all those things and can be domineering and excessive. And um, so, I mean, it rules your ego. So, um, what is being eclipsed by this eclipse on the 12th of August is to do with that, your sense of ego in some area of your life. And that's what I wanted to show. And the themes that are going to be more stressed are to do with the opposite sign, which is Aquarius, and Uranus rules that. And that's more the collective of society. So that would be more the themes that we're moving toward. And that's on a big scale. It affects the whole world, but in your own chart, I'm just going to show where it is for you in your own chart. And the things that will be more stressed will be more the society at large, and maybe individuality, and all the things that Aquarius rules is more what the collective is moving toward. And all some type of thing that you have been egotistical about, or some romance that you have been really invested in, may end. For in Aries, the two areas of life that are affected are the fifth house and the 11th house. And an eclipse always eclipses something where it is placed. And since it is placed in your fifth house of children, creativity, entertainment, and romance, that something in that area will end for you. And because it's connected, this particular eclipse is connected to the South Node, which is the node of fate. It creates an 18-month effect. So it will affect you for over the next 18 months. And what the effect is for having an eclipse, because the sun rules your ego and your pride, and how you entertain and how you express and how you come across, either authoritatively or not, depending on where your sun is in your birth chart. but the type of entertainment may end, the type of way you've been entertaining yourself, that or something that you've invested your ego and pride into will end, that are in matters of creativity or your home, not home, but the way that you have been showing up. You may just lose your ego and move toward, what happens is you move toward that opposite house energy. So you may be more focus your loss of your ego on creating and showing up as egotistical or shining. You may focus more on affecting revolution in society and dealing with matters that are ingenious or inventive or that take more ingenuity. You might just be more revolutionary. You might want to affect society at large in some way, and be less focused on how you are, how less focused on yourself and more focused on society at large, and affecting society at large. And like I say, this is an 18-month effect, so because of the nodes of destiny, and all change is meant to make you move more toward your destined path. And so that's the energy for the next 18 months. And an eclipse can make a sudden change. Something could end. I mean, that is the house of romance that the sun is in. So, I mean, it could be an end of romance, or it could be an end of some type of connection to that you've been really invested in, some type of entertainment or a creative project you've really been invested in. You suddenly decide to end it, but the effect, because it's with the north, no, I mean, with the south node, it creates an effect that can last over 18 months. So anyway, uh, yeah, I think that's it. So the house that the eclipse occurs in for a Taurus is the fourth house of home and mother nurturing. So something will be eclipsed from that area of your life. Maybe you'll quit doing something with your mother, or some type of nurturing will complete, or your home, something from your home will end, and you'll become more focused on the matters in the opposite house, which are maybe something with your father or older men, or your career, um, or responsibilities, or some type of thing that you have to work extra hard on. Some structure that you're wanting to focus more on, that will affect society at large, rather than focus on home matters. So for Gemini, the two areas of life that the eclipse affects are your third house of communications, siblings, and short trips, and which is ruled by the lower mind, that your conscious mind. And then the opposite house that it affects is the house that rules the higher mind and higher education and so forth. So what happens with an eclipse is, where the eclipse is, it eclipses something. So it will, maybe you will have less focus. You will is short distance communications or some type of communications that you have been doing on a lower scale will become maybe more over the time that the nodes are. It's an 18-month effect because this is with this south node, and so what will happen is that you will become more focused on maybe your higher education or more formalized religion or more philosophical and theological themes, and go more toward that rather than more localized communications, or you just may have more long distance and foreign connections and more travel that involves the higher mind rather than where the sun is eclipsing, which is the house that rules the lower mind, and studies that are not as in depth as you will be going into more in depth into the higher mind, or things that will affect society at large by long distance communications and so forth, rather than local communications. So what an eclipse does is eclipses one part of your life, something in one part of your life. And for a Cancer, the second house is where the eclipse will affect, and that is money earned through your own efforts. It's your values, it's possessions, luxuries, rich food, and then so those things something will end in the way that maybe you earn money through your own efforts, and then you will go more toward the opposite house, which is ruled by Aquarius, and so move more toward the themes that may affect society, and that house rules money coming to you from outside sources, and death, sexuality, obsessions, your psychology, maybe you're ending something that affects your values at home, and go more into in depth into the occult, or into something psychological, or something that some type of obsession that you have, or it revolutionizes where it is. So the way that the things that you obsess about, or that the psychological makeup that you have, or the maybe something happens once a death that affects you deeply, or something will transform the way that you think, or just maybe in general you'll transform the way you think. And the reason I'm going in depth about it is because this is an 18-month effect, because the sun is lined up with the south node, so it's an 18-month effect, and the north node just went into Aquarius, so all the matters that are Aquarian will be more focused on. And Pluto, which rules that house, the eighth house, it rules the study of astrology, and Aquarius rules the practice of astrology. So you could maybe focus on that more over the next 18 months. So with the Leo, the two houses that are affected for you, the sun is it's the eclipse is happening in your first house of self-image, and energy and your initiative and so forth. And so what an eclipse does is end something or finish something where it is placed. And because it is connected to the south node of fate, this effect will be over an 18-month period. So um, what happens is maybe your ego is and self-identity will undergo a change that is an 18-month effect. You'll maybe lose the things the way that you've been entertaining, or the way that you've been, the connections that you've had with your children will end, or the the type of entertainment that you have had, the image that you've had of yourself, your ego will maybe, some type of thing that you prided yourself on will end, and then you'll be going more into revolutionizing the opposite house of relationships and partnerships. And so you might find some ingenious project to revolutionize that is involving partnerships or involving your marriage. You may have some type of ingenious way of uh, dealing with a partner, some that affects society at large. You'll be more focused on society, away from your ego. And like I say, the effect is an 18-month one, so it will be a slow process maybe, or you might feel it right away about the loss of ego by the eclipse. And sometimes it's a very sudden feeling of a change. I guess that's it for that one. For Virgo, the houses that are affected by the eclipse are your 12th house of imagination, connection to spirituality, and your unconscious motivations, your dream life, your imagination. And so something, wherever an eclipse happens, it ends something. It eclipses something from that area. So with this one, it is connected with the south node, which is making it have an effect that will last over an 18-month period. So while this is happening, you may have less connection, or something will end that maybe an addiction will, an addiction could end, or something that you've been imagining, some creative thought you've been having, you'll move away from, and it will come to an end. And what we'll be more focused on is you'll be more revolutionizing all the matters that are in the opposite house, and they could affect society at large, but it could be revolutionary and so forth. And that opposite house is the house of daily tasks and um, routines, and your how caretaking, nursing, could be anything like that, you or your pets. So you may focus more on your daily tasks and routines than being imaginative over these next 18 months. And that's the effect that the eclipse will end some type of being more in your, more connected to your unconscious motivations, and more into your daily routines and more concrete work or health matters. So the two areas of life that a Libra will be affected by the eclipse are the 11th house and the 5th house. And the 11th house is where the eclipse happens, and so an eclipse eclipses something from that area. So whatever way you have been entertaining yourself, or how your ego has showed up, or how you have expressed yourself, will be changing or will be ending, or it could be a romance, or that was very visible to society, or some type of um, activity that you were doing with your children could end, or something that you pride yourself on, or the way that you've been entertaining yourself or expressing yourself could end, um, because an eclipses something, and it's connected. This one is connected with the south node, which makes it have an 18-month effect. And so this could happen over the next 18 months, and then you'd be moving more toward doing the things that are in society that are connected with that opposite house. And that's the house that the sun rules, which is entertainment, children, and romance. So I don't know, it's almost a balancing act between them because they're in mutual reception. And so that means that the rulers of the ruler of the sun is in the opposite house of where where you'll be affecting. So but it could just be a change in the way you entertain, and change in the way that you have romance. But because an eclipse is something, some type of way you have been doing things will end. For a Scorpio, the areas of life that the eclipse will affect are the 10th house of career and father, and the 4th house of mother and home and nurturing. And so an eclipse is something where it is placed, and so the sun may eclipse something that you've been doing in your career, or it could end your career, or it could end the type of career that you had decided on, or it could end something you've been doing with your father or some older men, because of the placement that it is, and that's what that house rules. And then because it's an 18-month, it's connected to the south node, so it's the nodes of fate, and they changed signs and now will be affecting the same area for 18 months. So that effect that you're feeling, or of something ending, could be lasting over something can happen quickly with an eclipse. It can end suddenly, but then the effect will affect over an 18-month period. And so you'll be going into more revolutionizing, where the opposite house is ruled, is the home and mother. So maybe you'll be more focused on mother and home matters, and revolutionizing what you think at home, maybe having some ingenious idea from home, or um, uh, some type of invention that you create at home. And like I say, over an 18-month period. So could last for a while, but eclipses are sudden energy sometimes. So it could be your career ends quickly, or something with an older man, or something with your father just ends, and then you go more toward revolutionizing your home matters. It may sound negative to have something end, but it's always for the higher good. It's always for your soul growth. So whatever happens, it's a destined happening. For Sagittarius, the areas of life that will be affected are the ninth house of the higher mind and philosophies and religion and theology and um, higher education, long distance and foreign communications, and long distance and foreign travel. So something will be eclipsed there. Maybe you'll finish a trip or finish some kind of higher education, and because eclipse something in the area that it is at. So, and this one is in connection with the nodes of fate, the south node, which releases something, which ends something. So, and it makes the effect happen over an 18-month period. So it could be sudden because of the eclipse. It can be a sudden energy, but it could be felt more over. The effects will be felt over an 18-month period while the nodes are in the sign. The south node is in Leo. And so the opposite house is what you may focus because you're releasing the higher education or foreign travel or whatever. You'd be focusing more on local communications and local travel and more local connections than in communications, maybe with your siblings or because that's what that house rules, and it would be a revolutionary, ingenious energy of maybe communicating from home. I mean, not from home, but more locally. That's the house of communications, but it's more on your conscious mind, use of your conscious mind, and it could be studies that are not, they're elementary studies, learning something on a superficial level rather than with the higher mind. And so maybe not going so much in depth with the ninth house and maybe more less in-depth thinking. For a Capricorn, the two areas of life affected are the eighth house and the second house, and the where the eclipse is in the eighth house of transformations, psychology, death, rebirth, sexuality, the occult. Uh, so what happens with an eclipse is it eclipses something from that area of your life. So it's also rules money coming to you from outside sources. So maybe some type of money from outside sources might end, or you might end some type of psychological thinking, or some attachment to occult matters, or some addiction can end. That also rules addictions. So, or maybe, I mean, it doesn't rule addictions, it rules obsessions. Obsessions is what might end. Some type of obsession you've had could end. And it could be a sexual one because, or it could be with a death that you've experienced some obsession over, or obsession over matters that deal with how money is coming to you from outside sources. Maybe those will end, and you know, your attachment to it will end because the sun rules your ego, and so something you prided yourself on in the area of sexuality or death or rebirth or something you're transforming could end, and then you would go more into revolutionizing the opposite house, which is working through your own your values and your um, love, maybe feeling more love than being focused on sexuality. Even give up the investing your ego in sexuality and more on your values and love and all the things that the second house rules, which is how you bring money in through your own efforts, through your own hands, and your possessions and your luxuries and your with it being connected to the north node and the south node, this can be an 18-month effect to where you're more focused on your values than the opposite house. So, I mean, eclipses can end something suddenly, but it can also, because it's connected to the nodes of fate, it can be an 18-month effect while Leo transits, while the south node is in Leo and the north node is in Aquarius. So they're connected this time. So for an Aquarius, the two areas of life that this eclipse affects are the seventh house of partnerships and marriage and the house of identity, self-image, self-identity. And so where the eclipse falls is in your seventh house of partnerships and relationships and marriage. So you might end some type of partnership or end some type of, because an eclipse eclipses where it is placed, it eclipses some type of matter dealing with that house. And so the seventh house is could be your marriage, something about your marriage, or something a partnership may end, or something you've a contract with someone may end. Some type of partnership would end, and then you would become more focused on the opposite house matters, and that would be how your self-image would be more connected to, or even back to the seventh house. The seventh house is relationships and partners, and the sun is your ego, and so you might give up some type of creative project or ego that is connected with a partnership, or something that you prided yourself on that you were working on with a partner that ends. And then the opposite house is where you'd be focusing more on something that is about your image, can affect society at large. You would be working more toward your how you present yourself to society, maybe, and that will be the focus over an 18-month period because of the connection to the nodes of fate. So you would be more focused on, you would become more over an 18-month period, become more focused on presenting yourself a certain way, away from showing up as an egotistical person and more toward humanitarian or altruistic image that you're trying to show, maybe over the next 18 months. So for Pisces, the two houses that are affected are the house of the sixth house of routines, daily tasks, works that you perform on a daily basis, routines, your health, your work in general, whatever work that you do, caretaking, pets, any kind of caretaking, any kind of work. And so something will end in that area of life for you, because an eclipse eclipses where it is placed. It eclipses something from that area of life. So maybe the type of work you were doing would end, or it could be just that your ego, you don't feel so egotistical in your work, or your ego becomes less invested in your routines and daily tasks, or with your children, or with pets, or you might just have less, show up less entertaining and more focused on your routines, and the area of life that you would be focused on more is where, because these are connected to the south node and the north node this time, uh, it's an 18-month effect, and the sun is in, the south node is connected to where the eclipse is, and so the effect is that it affects that opposite house for 18 months, and the opposite house for you is your creative, unconscious motivations. It can be addictions, it can be isolation, it can be hospitalization, it can be, it's the house of loss, and I don't want to make it sound too negative. It's just you might focus more on imaginative projects rather than daily routines over this next 18 months. Or you might really get into spirituality and divine connection, because that also is ruled in that house. All the signs have negative and positive, and so what you are more focused on over these 18 months would be more toward your imaginative side rather than your uh, concrete work with your hands and so forth. So, and that's the effect. An eclipse eclipses something. So that's what we're looking at for this one. Thanks for listening.